Hello everybody, my name is Dr. Sloane. I am a sociologist studying the intersection of design, technology, and society, and I am a senior research scientist at the Center for Responsible AI at NYU Tandon, where I also teach at the Department of Technology, Culture, and Society.
And my name is Matt Statler. I'm a philosopher, and I serve as the Richmond Family Director of Business Ethics and Social Impact Programming, and as Clinical Professor of Business and Society for the NYU Stern School of Business.
It is our absolute pleasure to welcome you all to A Better Tech, the first and free convention and career fair for public interest technology. It is a product of a collaboration between the NYU Stern School of Business and the NYU Tandon School of Engineering, and it really is a reflection of the interdisciplinary nature of the field of public interest technology. We have 2 days ahead of us filled with exciting events. Workshops, dialogues, ideas, book talks, career sessions, a hackathon, keynotes, and more.
But before we get into details and say a few words about the significance of public interest technology and the event ahead of us, we want to acknowledge that we are located on the unceded land of the Lenape peoples. We ask you all to join us in acknowledging the Lenape community and the indigenous communities on whose land you may be located, and to commit to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism.
We also want to express our commitment to the Black Lives Matter movement and the ongoing project to tackle white privilege and systemic racism and to develop an anti-racist culture in our communities and institutions. The idea that technology is everywhere is not new, and yet, over the past year and a half, we have all acutely felt just how much technology has become the social glue that holds us together, from working, teaching, and learning, to exercising, playing, and connecting with family and friends. The COVID-19 pandemic saw most of our social practices become mediated by technology, even more so than before. And with that, we also saw issues around technology and inequality more and more come to the surface. Reliance on private infrastructure, the digital divide, harassment, and disproportionately impacted communities come to mind. Additionally, some automated decision systems used across many social institutions and situations, schools, banks, HR departments, public institutions, hospitals, to predict behaviors or situations to help make decisions and allocate resources, those technologies have now long been proven to have the potential to not only uphold structural discrimination and inequality, but exacerbate it.
We started planning this event in the summer of 2020, when many of these ethical challenges facing the technology industry were already clear. Of course, we then had no idea that the timing of this event would be marked by a whistleblower alleging in a televised expose and then in congressional testimony that one of the biggest social media platforms had extensive knowledge about the harm they were causing to society, but suppressed that knowledge and forged ahead with a strategy that was both highly profitable and highly damaging to the greater public. This, yet again, begs the question of whose interests are represented and served in those technologies that glue us together. Clearly, over the past years, and particularly the past 2 weeks, the importance of public interest technology has risen dramatically, making this event even more relevant and timely.
And it is that question, really, that underpins A Better Tech, but in a hopeful way. For us, public interest technology is an emerging field in which technologists, designers, strategists, researchers, community members, and advocates, as well as policymakers, leverage digital technologies to create more sustainable and equitable economic and governance systems. Collectively exploring what that means in practice and what career paths in public interest technology are possible is the focus of A Better Tech.
And we are exploring these possibilities for practice in a variety of ways. We have one big hackathon, 14 panels, 6 workshops, 15 keynote speakers, 8 authors presenting their books, 33 ideas presentations, more than 30 employers and universities registered for the career fair, and we're reaching as many as 6,000 students from at least 43 different universities. The themes covered are as diverse as the field of public interest technology itself. We'll be hearing about algorithmic bias in clinical care, design refusal and inclusive design, SNAP enrollment and designing civic tech, dismantling surveillance norms, the decentralized web, social justice informatics, the intersection of libraries and the tech sector, and the ethics of tech financing.
Our keynote speakers will discuss issues related to equity, policy, and public interest technology, the role of philanthropy in building the public interest technology field, critical tech journalism and its significance in safeguarding the public interest, venture capital, entrepreneurship, and the leaky tech pipeline, and forging new public interest technology careers in industry. Please make sure to check abettertech.net for the whole schedule.
And don't forget, tomorrow you can talk to recruiters directly about career opportunities in public interest technology in our career fair, which is taking place on Handshake in coordination with dozens of universities and employers.
This entire event would not have been possible without the very generous support of our funder, the New America Public Interest Technology University Network. Our sincere thanks to them and the whole team.
We also want to thank our many collaborators, chiefly Pepperdine University, Stanford University, and the University of Washington, as well as Democracy Lab and All Tech is Human, and of course, our NYU colleagues and supporters at the NYU Tandon School of Engineering, the NYU Stern Business School, and the NYU Alliance for Public Interest Technology.
Our deep gratitude also goes to all the terrific workshop organizers, panel participants, and idea presenters, our keynote speakers, and hackathon organizers and participants who so very generously fill our program.
All good things involve team effort, and A Better Tech is no exception. We are exceedingly grateful to be working behind the scenes with an incredible team, including Dr. Sarah Welsh, Rebecca Tweed, Melissa Lucas-Ludwig, Mara van Lagerenberg, Nazali Dogramajian, Kat Blake, Yifan Gu, and Saurabh Kumar. We thank you for everything you have done for the past weeks and months, and for everything that you are doing and will do today and tomorrow to make this event possible. It's our pleasure and honor to serve as your hosts and moderators over the next 2 days. And now, we turn to the first item on our agenda, our opening keynote conversation.
What are the ways in which technology exacerbates inequality and discrimination? What are the historical roots of oppression through technology? How can public interest technology be a vehicle to advance equity and confront inequality? How can addressing these issues advance democratic values and ideals? What can government, education, policy, advocacy, and industry do together to advance equity in the emerging field of public interest technology? Our 2 opening keynote speakers have, for many years, been at the forefront of exploring these questions and working to address them in education and in policy, and as public scholars and as thought leaders. And they both continue to lead the field. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome as opening keynote panelists Dr. Alondra Nelson and Dr. Charlton McIlwain for our conversation on building equity in public interest technology. Dr. Alondra Nelson currently serves as the inaugural Deputy Director for Science and Society in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. In this role, she brings social science expertise, including attention to issues of social inequality, explicitly into the work of federal science and technology strategy and policy. Dr. Nelson is also Harold F. Lintner Chair and Professor at the Institute for Advanced Study, an independent research center in Princeton, New Jersey. She was president of the Social Science Research Council, which is an international research nonprofit, and she served in that role from 2017 to 2021. Previously, she was a professor of sociology at Columbia University, where she also served as the inaugural Dean of Social Science. Dr. Nelson's research contributions are situated at the intersection of political and social citizenship on the one hand, and emerging science and technology on the other. Dr. Nelson connects these dimensions in a range of widely acclaimed publications, including, most recently, The Social Life of DNA. Dr. Nelson is a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the American Academy of Political and Social Science, the American Philosophical Society, and the National Academy of Medicine. Today, Dr. Nelson will be in conversation with Dr. Charlton McIlwain, who is Vice Provost and Professor of Media, Culture, and Communication at NYU. He is the author of Black Software, the Internet and Racial Justice from the Afronet to Black Lives Matter. His work investigates the intersection of race and computing technology. He has served as an expert witness in landmark U.S. federal court cases on reverse redlining and racial targeting in mortgage lending, and recently testified before Congress about the impacts of automation and artificial intelligence on the financial services industry. Dr. McIlwain founded the Center for Critical Race and Digital Studies at NYU, and he heads NYU's Alliance for Public Interest Technology. Dr. Nelson and Dr. McIlwain, we are very excited and very grateful to be able to host you at A Better Tech. Thank you for being here and helping us shape the future of public interest tech. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Sloane. And Deputy Director Nelson, it is so great to be with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
It is great to see you, Vice Provost McIlwain, Charlton. It's great to be together again. And congratulations on this great initiative at NYU on public interest technology and on this exciting conference.
Thanks so much. So we're going to delve in right there where you said it, public interest technology. And I want to start off by just asking you, how do you define public interest technology? We've seen a lot of names for it, civic tech or tech for public good. But in a nutshell, what does public interest technology mean for you?
I think it's a very rich and useful phrase, and I would love actually to hear your answer to this question as well. I think it can be that can be a little bit misleading. So I'd like to break down the kind of two pieces of it. So there are many technologies that are used in the public sphere. Many kinds of technical talent, data scientists, software engineers, computer scientists with machine learning and human-computer interaction expertise. Folks like you and I who study the political and social implications of new and emerging technologies and more. So this is happening across many domains of domains across social sectors across the world. And of course, what's so great about the work that you're doing at NYU, I'll be a proud alumna for a moment, is that you're doing this work across departments, across schools, and across campuses. So there's many ways to use technology and many methods. But I think there are far fewer ways that people are using technology that's being truly created or used in the public interest. And this is where the work that you're doing is so important. And I think that can be lots of things. And I look forward to sort of watching the field grow and see how people really fill out what the space of what it means to work in the public interest means. So, it could be serving and collaborating with local, state, and federal government. It could be working with community-based organizations and in civil society. or could be working in our public education sector. All of these are really important places of public service and places where we need our best thinkers, best doers, best minds to, I think, really help lead and guide all of us, both with technical skill and I think with vision into the automated society that we're moving in. And so I think the challenge for the field is the sort of, on the one hand, that technologies are used all over in the public sphere. On the other hand, that there's, I think, we're still, I think, in the space of realizing what it means to do this work in the public interest. And so that's I think the great promise of the field, and particularly I think exciting about the NYU program is your particular investment and attention to issues of equity and social and racial justice as central to the work of public interest technology. And so I think closing that gap is like achievable. It's what you all are doing every day. And it's, I think, tremendously exciting to think about turning the tools of technological innovation with the kind of equity lens, with a lens to issues of inequality and wanting to really drive equality and inclusion to like big challenges like pandemic preparedness, climate change. So I'm tremendously excited about the possibilities and the promise that the field holds. But I think it's also the case that that we need to be mindful of biases, potential exploitation and misuse that come with new forms of technology. And this too seems to me to be, I think, the work of public interest technology at its best, sort of really looking around corners at how things that are intended or hope to be in the public service, have these sort of challenges or hurdles to like the full accomplishment of that. So I think there's lots of that the field can do, and that if we, filling this, sort of meeting this gap that I laid out between the public interest and the technology, really, if we don't accomplish it, it's really not a failure of the technology, it's a failure of our own imaginations, like that we really can improve human experience, expand human freedom. And if we don't do that, it's not just the technology's fault, it's our fault in how we're framing what it means to work in the public interest and the ways in which technology is really, and innovation should really be used to advance and drive, equity and inclusion.
Thanks for that. It's such an amazing answer, and gives me so many things that I want to say and ask about, and things that we certainly don't have all kinds of time or as much time as I would like. But maybe I will start a little bit with this kind of mind shift, because I think you bring up public service. You're someone who is in public service and made a transition and thinking of going from higher education and in the academy to something that is very specific around serving the public. And I think for me, that's sometimes where things get lost and sort of murky when you think about what does it really mean to be in the public interest? What does it mean to serve the public? And then you talked a little bit about sort of individuals. And so maybe is there a shift in kind of mindset that you have seen that has either happened or that we need to happen amongst technologists, amongst all the kinds of folks that you talked about being involved in this work, that sort of focus and shifts attention really to a more narrowed sense of what it means to work in the public interest, to even get to the point where we think about a shift in, let's say, building technology, using technology that serves, our own ends, whether that's economic benefit or political ideological benefit. What kind of shift has to happen to get those in the tech community and adjacent fields in the kind of mindset to really think about seriously and take seriously what it means to develop and grow this field and field of professional practice that is public interest tech?
It's a really great question. I mean, I think part of it is generational. I mean, you and I are of a certain generation, and there are lots of, the young people that we've had the great privilege of teaching across our careers, I think, come with, very, clear ideas about what they want society to look like. And at the same time are, come into a world in which they are using technology from time when they're toddling and these are computer science majors and HCI majors. And, there's a real transformation in how people think about their work. Here at OSTP, part of the work that I do is about really kind of helping to expand equity in the kind of science and technology ecosystem. So that's also really, sort of, I think, opening up the space of government and opening up the space of doing technological and scientific work, not just for people who are going to be elite scientists at R1 universities, but that it really can involve and does and should involve all of us. There's a really a piece of technological work, or scientific work, I think that that people can plug in lots of different ways. So that can be hardware, that can be software, that can be infrastructure, it can be coding, there's all sorts of ways to do it. And indeed, this is the kind of work and sociality of the future. And so I think that there are many, many opportunities. I feel like sitting here in my office in Washington, that I have such the great benefit of and privilege of working with people all around who I think have had that mind, that kind of shift that you're talking about. So, there are folks working in the U.S. Digital Service. There's a U.S. Digital Corps. There are sort of technologists, data scientists, computer scientists. I have, 3 computer scientists on my own team here at OSTP who have amazing skills, who could work at the top of their fields in any form of industry or academy, but really understand that the work of democracy really requires that all of us, really chip in and pitch in and do the work. And so I do have so much admiration for colleagues that I know could be, making 2, 3, 4 times the salary that they're making, but are here in Washington, in the second week of October, trying to figure out how to deliver better customer service to the American public. That's just an extraordinary thing. How do we make forms better? How do we reduce burden and how people do their work so that we are, how do we make technology and interfaces and dashboards and databases, just to name a few, better such that people don't give up when they're seeking to engage government. They don't give up when they're seeking to get access to benefits or resources or things that they need because they're so frustrated by the interface. And, what would it mean to sort of drive modernization and innovation across government? So I am inspired every day by working with, many young people, extraordinary young people who have come to Washington, who have extraordinary skill sets to do this work and to have this commitment. And I would say it doesn't have to be, whether it's in, teaching in K-12 or working in local government. For some people, it will be their whole life. I think for others, it will be periods of their life. And so I think we also, that part of the mindset is, I think, also the way that people are thinking about the kind of flow of their lives and the flow of their work. And that, a commitment to civic tech or public interest technology can be something that you do for short term, or it can be a life commitment, or it can be something that you go in and out of. And
Yeah, I like the way you bring up sort of the everyday uses of technology and the interface with government and what that means. And I think in essence, that kind of defines a bit of the public interest, meaning, we're talking about people for whom, tech may not be their professional practice. They simply need to access certain services or resources, and building a good form is very important, or making sure one gets through the gatekeeping mechanism. If I'm talking about trying to access healthcare or insurance or benefits is really important. And so I think sometimes that gets lost because, technology, particularly for some of our younger folks and students and so forth, is exciting. And we think about what's sort of appealing and so forth. But I think it's that underlying kind of mundane and making sure everybody has what they need and can use technology in the way that they need to use it and do so successfully that is really kind of the essence of thinking about public interest and public interest technology. I want to go into something that you've spoken about quite a bit already, which is this topic of equity. And I will say, for all the things I love about public interest technology and the growing field of public interest technology, something I'm always sort of concerned with is that a lot of people often get lost in this notion of the public and the public interest and who benefits and who government serves or who our public tools and so forth serve. So I want to talk a little bit about what it means to think about equity and having equity as a core centralized concept and motivating factor as this field of public interest technology grows. So I'd love to hear, how you define equity, sort of generally how you define equity in the context of technology, and thinking about ways that would make a difference, thinking in having equity centered rather than just our typical notions of, let's make tech work for everybody.
Or assume that tech works for everybody, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so we get carried away and just assume that it automatically works for everyone. I think that so on the very first day, actually, of the Biden-Harris administration, the president issued this executive order on advancing equity. This was a day one executive order. And, so I would take my definition from there, but it's one that, I embrace and share nevertheless, which is this, idea that, people come to government, come to life, come to lived experience from different places in the world and from different social locations. And those locations, including historical experience, have everything to do with whether or not they're able to step into various kinds of resources, opportunities, experiences, and the like. And so, those include things like, disability, veteran status, obviously, race, gender, sexual orientation, whether one not lives in, in the context of technology, whether one lives in an urban setting or a rural setting, both of which have challenges around access to broadband and these sorts of things. So that is sort of really considering where people come from, not where we want them to be, and thinking about opportunities, resources, and the like. I think, so I'm so honored to work at OSTP in a new division called Science and Society. And part of what we're trying to do is to think about what it means to take a kind of equity upstream, equity first kind of equity early approach to thinking about science and technology policy. And part of that means, I think being engaging the public and like finding out where people are, not making assumptions about where they are and what they need. And so we've been having a lot of conversations with a lot of different people from across the US and asking them about their experiences with emerging technology. And, the answers have been fairly consistent. We hear, people who are, want to work in scientific and technological fields, but, maybe have some concerns. And some of the concerns are about the way that new technologies might exacerbate forms of inequality. Some of the concerns are about some of the historical uses of science and technology that have not always been welcoming to all of our communities. And so, we've heard, accounts of people being denied, apartment rentals and other kinds of access to economic resources and not quite knowing why. Maybe there's some kind of technological sorting happening that's not clear. Obviously, there's been lots of press reports and accounts of people being misidentified and arrested and misidentified by policing technologies. And so there are issues of inequity, issues of injustice that that we need to be careful about, that can be baked in by design, but that we can do something about. And so we began to, I think, part of the equity piece is really thinking about what we announced last week, which is sort of movement towards a kind of, Bill of Rights for automated society, and really kind of trying to clarify the rights, like civil rights, the foundational rights that we should really all have and expect kind of data-driven technologies to respect. And so, I think that the equity piece is that kind of public engagement. We also issued a request for public information and public feedback about biometrics technologies, the kind of broad swath of them. And so the equity piece for us means, asking not only experts or not only elites, what they think about technology or what technology does in the world, but also being willing to reach out into the American public and ask them about their experiences, and they don't have to know anything about how an algorithm works. I mean, also, I think that kind of the work of translation to the public about the tools that we're living with, is a very important, I think, facet of public interest technology. So I think that's part of the work, and this kind of, I think, central honesty about, both about how great technology can be if used well, and the kind of dangers that it could potentially harbor, particularly for, minoritized and marginalized communities already.
Yeah, that's great, and I'm curious to hear a little bit more about some of that work that you're doing that's directly with the public, because I know, I frequently get the question. I know that you get it often, which is, for folks that are already in an equity mindset and are trying to center equity, I think there still is a kind of sense, both in kind of professional practice, those of us who are academics, researchers, et cetera, about, what does it really mean to be among, to listen to the public, and to shape and design and even conceptualize technology that, from its base, its foundation, from its motivation, is centered on that actual public, and not sort of the figments of sort of, elites and so forth that our policies often serve. So I guess the question is, what, taken from some of this listening and so forth that you've been doing and involved with, and some of your work, more broadly across your career, what is it that we sort of need to do to be able to kind of make that shift, such that the public, in all of these very specific ways, so not just talking about a general public, but specific communities, and often those that are vulnerable or marginalized or locked out of certain types of opportunity, how do we start to think about designing and deploying technology that really starts there, and not with, hey, we built something, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I really am, committed to thinking about these in the frame of kind of democratic values and ideals, and reminding ourselves that, democracy is challenged, is complicated, it ebbs and flows, and its efficacy, but, in its aspiration, it really is about the needs of people, in societies and communities. And it's about, individuals pulling a lever in a voting booth, and individuals being able, I think, also to help set, political and policy agendas. And I think you're exactly right about the design process, right? That who gets to be in the conversation when tools and capabilities and technologies are being generated and created. And, it's harder to do. It takes longer, right? It is, And so I think in our kind of policy planning process, it takes longer, it takes more outreach, it takes more time to really engage the public. And I think we have to be, I think both wanting to drive quickly and work as quickly as we can in the space of innovation, but also that understand that I think there can be a kind of long tail to innovation, which is if we do this upstream design process work right, hopefully what we'll get out of the back end are tools, technologies, capabilities that are maybe less buggy, so less buggy in a technical sense, but also less buggy in a social sense. That don't mean that we have to just stop everything and say oh gosh, let's backtrack and figure out where we might have gone wrong there. So, I want to imagine, kind of rich collaborations and partnerships, partly with industry, but also academic researchers, civil society, members of the public, who begin to, and as you say, not all of us, think this way, think about issues of equity. I mean, I think even in a technical sense would be a start, at the start of the design process, and not only after things have emerged downstream. And I think it's true for a lot of science and technology. It's not only true for tech and endeavors at tech innovation. And, for me, I think one of the big questions is, one of the questions that President Biden posed to Eric Lander, who directs OSTP, in this letter. He wrote this letter to Eric just before the administration got underway. And one of it was how do we ensure that the fruits of science and technology benefit all people? So that's really kind of a guiding light and guiding principle. And that really means how do we get to the all? All is aspirational, we'll do the very best that we can, but that really means having a different mindset, to use the word that you used earlier, and sort of asking these questions about upstream about who's included and how do we get to the all. I think it's also really about asking the question, what kind of society do we want to live in? So what do we want our society to look like from the beginning? And how does this innovative piece of technology, this capability, help achieve that, right? So how, can pandemic preparedness help us, in planning now upstream, prepare for our future pandemic, as we're trying to help do at OSTP, in a way that also tries to anticipate, forms of discrimination that we saw and are seeing with COVID-19. So we're, you can't predict the future. We're not always going to get that right, but it's so important, I think, for technologists, particularly those who want to work in the public interest, to be asking those kinds of bigger questions, even as they're doing that amazing, almost miraculous work of creating new tools and new programs and new code and the like.
Yeah, and that's where I want to start to wrap up. We've got a whole group of students that are viewing and listening to us. They're chomping at the bit to learn more about public interest technology, to pursue it as a professional practice. So, putting your professor's hat back on again and facing a group of these students, what would you say to both these students, but I will say also to those of us that are leading higher ed institutions? What can both of these groups of folks do to begin to prepare for careers, work, all these things that will take us or give us the ability to kind of think about, imagine, and really pursue seriously this future that you spoke of, that the Biden administration has laid out, where technology truly works for all and that all citizens benefit from it? What can we be doing?
I think so. I'm not going to speak in my personal capacity, so I just want to plant that flag. I'm going to speak as a representative of the Biden-Harris administration. But as I mentioned, part of my portfolio includes the STEM ecosystem. So I think quite a lot about, education, educational institutions, and science and technology, education and workforce. So I'll talk from that way. I think continue to I think, lean into some of the amazing technology that is really, that we know is doing great things in the world, right? You know, like we know that there are ways in which AI is making life easier for people with disabilities. So you know, there's systems that are helping vision impaired people to navigate, you know, from their home to their workplaces and places in between. There are kind of AI assisted technologies that help with crop surveillance. So I think there are like all sorts of opportunities to like really lean into, you know, sort of like what we might have called a few years ago AI for good in the space of public interest technology. And so I think one of it is just do the work, learn the research, you know, dream the dreams, have the visions, be curious. And I think, you know, for the work that we're trying to do, particularly around STEM equity, never imagine that you have an interest that doesn't kind of fit in the STEM ecosystem, right? That there's just a lot of ways to be, to use the frame that we're using today, a public interest technologist. And that goes from, you know, kind of humanist skills and what we might call more, you know, STEAM to the most kind of sort of complicated sort of technological skills. So I would say, you know, to borrow a phrase from Jedidah Eisler, who's working with me here at OSTP, but before her time at OSTP used to lead a nonprofit organization around with STEM for women and people with gender expansive identities. And it, you know, one of their taglines was "Do your STEM," right? So, you know, do, you know, the kind of technology, public interest technology that inspires you, that, you know, is in your, you know, is about your passion for the world and the world that you want to create. And then I would just say, you know, for, you know, I'm remiss to offer advice to Vice Provost McIlwain, but I think, you know, NYU and others in the Public Interest Technology Network are already doing such incredible work. I mean, I think the answer to your question is really to mirror back to you the work that you're doing to really expand the space of possibility and imagination for what technological work can be, for who can do that work, and for how that work can transform the world.
I love it. Deputy Director Nelson, thank you so much for being with us today. I want to, you know, thank you personally, but also on behalf of the work that we're doing, for your work at OSTP. I think there are a lot of folks that are very grateful that the Biden-Harris administration, that your agency and your work are lifting up these issues of equity in the space of technology, perhaps even more than we've seen in recent history. It's important. And I want to thank you for sharing a little bit of your time and expertise. And we look forward to hearing others about the great work and things that you're doing.
Thank you for the invitation and for the conversation, and congratulations again on both the program and the conference.
All right, thanks so much. And I want to turn it back over to Dr. Sloane.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nelson and Dr. McIlwain, for this important and much needed conversation. After a short break, we will be moving to the action-oriented part of the day, workshops and dialogues, and our hackathon. Starting at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, you can participate in workshops and dialogues such as paving the way, entry-level careers in public interest technology, or using comics for public education on AI, or unpacking the racial digital divide, or open and decentralized web. We can also learn about foundations of human technology. At noon, we will kick off our hackathon together with Democracy Lab. Remember that all of these events are free and open to the public, but to access them, you need to go to our website, abettertech.net, to get to the Eventbrite page to register and receive the respective links. With the Zoom link, you can access the meeting rooms where workshops take place and the webinars where the dialogues will occur. We had to put these measures into place in order to ensure the security and integrity of A Better Tech, and so we thank you for your participation, and we ask that you not post or otherwise distribute your own access credentials. At 12:15 Eastern, come back to this channel for our lunch keynote session. We will hear from our second keynote panel on the role of philanthropy in building an ecosystem for public interest tech, featuring Michelle Shevin and Jenny Tomei of the Ford Foundation, who will be in conversation with Tom Khalil and Kumar Garg of Schmidt Futures, as well as Travis Moore, who founded Tech Congress. After that, this channel will stream our book talks. They are focused on public interest tech and on data privacy and big tech. As you can see, we have a lot of exciting stuff ahead of us. And so there's only one thing left to say for me, which is let's build a better tech together.